Legendary investor Michael Burry's come up again with his new big short trade, or you can say his biggest trade of 2023. Michael Burry, as it seems, is well-versed to comment on what he thinks is going to happen on the economic front. Recently, he's in the news again as he made another prediction that's causing some panic among people, because if this prediction does come true, the economic implications of it are going to be far bigger than what he's predicted before. So let's go find out what these predictions are for the stock market outlook in 2023. Burry recently tweeted saying that inflation peaked, but it's not the last peak of the cycle. We're likely going to see CPI lower, possibly negative in the second half of 2023, and the U.S. in recession by any definition. The Fed will cut, and government will stimulate, and we'll have another inflation. It seems like a warning to investors. He thinks that the country's broke and that the rally will be short-lived. Isn't it just amazing how confidently Burry openly tells us what his predictions are? For sure, it seems like someone who has a total grip on economic development in both present and the future. However, let's hope that this prediction of his does not come true, as it's a bad sign for all of us. Burry's predicting this cyclic wave of inflation will keep on happening in a similar pattern for the next few years because the Federal Reserve always lacks the willpower to keep rates high. Keeping rates high would mean recession waves will get stronger, with many more layoffs. However, the bright side of this would be that inflation would finally be crushed. The reason why such a scenario sends shockwaves among the investor community is that it takes us right back to the 1970s. But before going into the details, we have to analyze what's going on recently. Over the last few years, it's a combination of supply chain and money printing issues, and combining them both has resulted in inflation levels that we haven't seen in the past 40 years. As a result, the Federal Reserve had to step in and raise interest levels in a big way to discourage citizens and businesses to borrow money. Decreases in borrowing money would mean less spending in the market overall. However, this approach has one downfall, which results in an economic slowdown, and then it puts everyone under great financial pressure. To deal with it, we're looking and selecting the lesser of two evils, because in one scenario, this approach would mean letting inflation continue to reach high levels to a point where everything becomes unaffordable for people. Whereas in the other case, higher interest rates would mean putting people into financial hardship for a limited period of time, in which the demand of goods and services would be brought down, and thus inflation would automatically settle down. Similarly, in 2022, we saw in the U.S. interest rates being increased to 4% from effectively nothing. This helped in getting inflation under control, and as a result, we're now witnessing a downward trend in it. However, as already discussed, this comes with a cost, and its burden is shared by the common folk and businesses alike with high interest rates. Most of the disposable incomes held are spent on paying debts like mortgages and personal loans, resulting in none or very little spending on other things. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that this decision to keep interest rates high for a sustained period of time is not popular among the public, since politicians want to make people happy for their own political mileage, and through the Federal Reserve chair they end up playing around with interest rates and inflation. The Fed chair, as we know, is a nomination made by the president. So let's understand that politically motivated decisions of lowering interest rates are made to appease the public. However, it's tantamount to welcoming inflation back with open arms. If such decisions are taken in haste and all of the difficult financial periods that the common people had to go through ended up being for nothing, and everyone's right back to where they were, the period between the 1970s and 1980 is a clear indication of this policy not working. The first period in which inflation peaked above 5%, the Fed acted and increased the interest rate to 9%, which helped bring down inflation to 3%. Thinking that inflation was in control, the Fed decreased the interest rate, resulting in a massive surge of inflation up to 11%. Not learning from their past mistakes, the Fed again decreased interest rates to 5% due to shifts in policy and limited periods of inflation. This time came back much stronger than it was previously, and it reached 14% in 1980. Lastly, when the interest rate was pushed up to 20% by Paul Volcker in 1980, the U.S. unfortunately went into a state of severe recession. Now, according to predictions made by Michael Burry, the U.S. has not learned its lesson from the past, and it will continue to play around with interest rates and inflation, resulting in sending the country down into recession. All of this will mean that people will continue to suffer from financial hardships, and the government will buckle under public pressure to decrease interest rates, only to see inflation come back stronger and higher than the last wave. And Burry isn't the only one with this prediction. But another notable super investment guru, Charlie Munger, is of the same opinion as well. He thinks the Fed will lack the willpower to keep the interest rates high to steer the U.S. out of the current inflation wave. However, all of us, including Burry and Munger, hope for things to get actually better, both in form of inflation and interest rates being back under control. Now, in hindsight, it may be a good thing because the country would have little chance of going into such a severe recession. However, there's another point of view which is equally terrifying, that as times have changed, so have the possible outcomes. Therefore, it's highly possible that whatever financial implications the U.S. might face due to tough economic conditions, their overall scope and impact might be more dangerous and unpredictable than just a recession. Moreover, experts like Munger and Burry also converge on the same point that it's in the hands of the Fed that could determine whether the country goes into severe recession, and it might happen if it gets involved in a ping-pong between raising interest rates to curb inflation, only to lower them down due to politically motivated decisions. Although the Federal Reserve actually noted numerous times they're committed to ensuring this doesn't happen in a few press conferences, we all know that high inflation imposes significant hardship as it erodes purchasing power, especially for those least able to meet the higher costs of essentials like food, housing, and transportation. The historical record cautions strongly against prematurely loosening policy. Will stay the course until the job is done. Recent increases in the interest rates by FOMC seems like a continuation of the increase in interest rate policies opted by the authorities to get inflation under control. It's a necessary step to form a restrictive monetary policy, as it'll help getting the inflation rate down to 2% over some period of time. Although the Fed are aware of things that happened in the 1970s and have publicly shared a stance of not repeating the same mistakes, the questions remain about their willpower to actually see it through. Publicly sharing such stances are good, but whether they follow it up is totally up in the air. Both Munger and Burry are sharing their opinions that while getting the inflation down to 2 or 3% by the Fed might be a good thing, they have to be very careful and vigilant over accidentally sending the country into another recession period in which a lot of U.S. citizens will ultimately lose their jobs and default on their bills. As Burry suggested, we're likely to see lower rates in the second half of 2023, which will ultimately lead the U.S. into a recession by all forms. The latest bearish predictions made by Burry aligns with this previous prediction of stock market crashes, where he correctly predicted in June that the market had not even seen half of the crash that's going to happen when and if the Fed cuts down interest rates. The government will automatically stimulate spending from people and businesses alike, leading inevitably towards bigger and more sustained inflation. Let us know in the comments section if you think whether the Fed will manage the current economic situation or that they'll crumble like in the past. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.